回到我们的论坛 ，Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back。接下来呢，我们要进入今天最后一个场次，主题是 Taiwan Tech Women 从产业出发，推动充分、平等、有意义的参与。We now move to our final session of the day, which is titled Taiwan Tech Women Advancing Full, Equal, and Meaningful Participation from an Industry Perspective。这个场次呢，我们会聚焦女性在数位产业以及网络治理当中的角色，并且探讨如何透过多元参与来促进更包容和永续的发展。In this session, we will focus on the role of women in the digital ecosystem and internet governance and explore how inclusive participation can drive a more sustainable and equitable future. 这个场次呢，我们非常荣幸邀请到台达电、中磊及巨大机械的独立董事，同时也是 Verizon Media 国际事业的前董事总经理邹开莲女士来为我们引言。To open this session, it's our great pleasure to first invite Ms. Rose Zhou, Independent Director at Delta Electronics, Sercom, and Giant Groups, and also the former Managing Director of International Business for Verizon Media, to share some thoughts with us. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Rose Zhou.
Hello. I presume this is going to be in Chinese, right? Okay, great.
Yes, thank you very much for the kind introduction. It's such a pleasure to join you at this TWNIC meeting. I think the topic of this session is really relevant for all of us here because we are going through the biggest wave of technological change driven by AI. We're witnessing a paradigm shift, so to speak. So today I'm going to talk about how women can participate in the next wave of transformation and innovation. Of course, in Taiwan, we have been blessed to talk about Taiwan's advances in AI, because Taiwan plays a critical role in the AI era with our semiconductor prowess, our data center air cooling system export capabilities. And for many, many years, we've actually cultivated our hardware capability that serves as a foundation for our AI performance. For example, semiconductor industry is poised to become a 7 trillion NT dollar industry for Taiwan. So we really need to think about how we can capitalize on this tech wave. And indeed, Taiwan is definitely going to see AI defining its future development. But today, we need to move beyond our industry or production value, because AI actually goes beyond the mere introduction of tools into our daily lives or into companies. It is being embodied across the industry chain or across different facets of society where we see fundamental changes. In Taiwan, we focus our attention mostly on the positives. Meanwhile, as we see AI develop, if we look at what's happening in the States, we see there are a lot of concerns about the potential development of AI. We see a lot of white-collar jobs being replaced, and resources seem to be further concentrated with a widening wealth gap. And actually, for data to power data centers, actually we need a lot of energy. That is to say, we see a lot of changes to our value system. For example, deepfake technology has also posed a threat in terms of how credible online content is. So today, we're not only talking about what AI can do, but rather what we can use AI to do for us. Then importantly, what kind of role can women play in terms of thinking about how we can actively participate in this wave of technological transformation. First, of course, AI has lowered the barrier to tech adoption. Okay, when it comes to innovation, we focus a lot on LLM language models or infrastructure, which requires huge capital input. But more often than not, we see that the advent of some technologies have lowered the barrier to entry. I think this is quite evident in our daily life. We are all beneficiaries of this lowering of barrier to entry. So we see that for brands to engage in international marketing, it would take a lot of effort. So you probably cannot do without a full marketing team, advertising team to help you produce relevant content. But today, things are different. Things have become easier. You can create content within a short period of time. We see new models coming into being every day. Those developed by Google, Gemini. There's always new models coming in, which will help us do a better job in data analytics or multilingual communication. So whether it's in consumer products, professional services, many people are leveraging AI to address pain points that would otherwise take you a lot of time before. For example, my daughter's friends in college used to work as a consultant at an accounting firm, and she found that there are a lot of pain points. So now she works at an AI complex company, and within 1 year, she has a lot of Fortune 500 companies under her management. And many of the engineers come from Taiwan, and she worked with a team of 6 only. Because now it has become more important that we need to have the ability to understand the nature of problems, the nature of human beings. Take healthcare. We definitely can see AI will drive huge change in this sector. So in one word, AI has unlocked a lot of opportunities for people to hop on the bandwagon. What's in it for women? Well, contextual understanding is very important for women. In the past, we probably didn't have a technical background, so sometimes we struggle to solve certain problems. We have to ask our grandparents for help. The way I just said to Tina, if sometimes you need to assemble a team of engineers to do marketing campaigns, but now everything can be conducted at your fingertip. So we do see more opportunities being unlocked for women in terms of better understanding for human beings or clients. So now that's the lowering of the barrier to entry. And most importantly, in the AI era, our discussion should move beyond technology. Of course, we need deep technology. We see these tech giants still engaging in pushing back the boundaries of science, but we need to go beyond that. For example, at the dawn of the internet era, basically it's much the same. We are looking at a fundamentally new industry. So a lot of women, they don't have any baggage. They are not the rule setters or industry incumbents. So they are otherwise not bound by the rules of the game. That is actually a good incentive to a lot of women unlocking their imagination. For example, I see a lot of entrepreneurs. using AI, especially agentic AI. And they realize that they have been their work, their problem-solving capabilities have all been facilitated. Now they can have a whole new perspective in addressing different problems. So problems are not problems anymore. They can now consider how to address a problem from the perspective of the entire organization and other perspectives. So we now see women are gaining ability to reimagine things. So women can become challengers, and they now can approach issues from different perspectives from the industry incumbent. Sometimes we can have a more holistic view. We may have a different understanding of risks. We may see problems before they take place, when we see a long-term impact rather than focusing on short-term gains. Of course, we are talking a lot about responsible AI. So when companies are introducing AI in their enterprises, the key is whether they can be introduced responsibly, not just for the sake of boosting productivity. So this is the moment where we call for the participation of women. And we know that some companies are still undergoing digital transformation, and technology is not the main hurdle to transformation. And a lot of companies are really enthusiastic about AI transformation, but they also encounter a lot of hurdles, many of which come from human resistance, and also how to overcome existing silos or the division of roles and responsibility within organizations. And a lot of people worry that AI may have a negative impact on their career trajectory. So for AI to move beyond its functional role with all the investment required, sometimes people fear that AI may underperform or may not meet our expectations because they only see AI fulfilling its missions in some of the areas only, not everything. So once again, this is something that speaks to the unique qualities of women. Women is very adept at dealing with ambiguity or uncertainty, so that we can continue to move forward despite uncertainty. It takes communication skills, mutual understanding our common worries and pains, understanding our common needs, and seeking common goals. So that the organization need to pay attention to the qualities of women again, because it's something that we need beyond technology to drive companies forward. We need to bring everyone on the team forward, and we definitely should not underestimate the potential or the ability of women to engage in interdisciplinary negotiation or mutual understanding. So women cannot afford to wait on the sideline. Don't just be a good girl. Don't wait until things are ready. So sometimes do not wait until things are clear. For example, if there's a new technology coming in or opportunity for you to solve any problem, women can think about whether they can play a more active role. So let's say women cannot afford to miss out on the opportunity afforded by this biggest way of tech transformation. Because we need to, actually the way we use AI says a lot about the person who uses AI. So we need to think about at what stage along the journey we can leverage the qualities of women. So we definitely need to go all in. We should not wait on the sideline, but play a key role in decision making. I think each time when Jensen Huang visits Taiwan, he treats corporate gurus to a nice dinner. But okay. My friend Emily is there, and the dinner party usually is a male-dominated occasion, featuring a lot of famous hardware names in Taiwan. Of course, that we are very proud of our hardware capabilities, but Taiwan's image is definitely not limited to this. But perhaps we can have a more diverse representation, demonstrating our innovative power, so we can truly demonstrate different phases of innovation, all driven by AI. And Taiwan can definitely bring its innovation to full play. With that, I conclude my opening remarks. So it is time for all women involved. Thank you.
周董事，请先回座。Thank you very much to Ms. Rose Zhou for your insightful sharing。那刚才周董事呢跟我们分享了非常多宝贵的见解哦。AI 打开了更多人参与创新的机会，在 AI 的时代呢，需要的不是只是技术，而是要重新想象。那 AI 真正的转型是在人跟组织一起改变的情况下才会发生。那这当中，女性有非常多的特质，都是可以发挥影响力的地方，包含了女性对于风险的看法可能更长远、更加全面，女性在沟通协调上面的能力可能也相对比较好。所以呢，周董事也鼓励大家，现在呢不是等待的时候了，现在是进场的时候了。所以非常的感谢周董事给我们非常精彩的见解。那接下来很期待稍后呢我们会有更多精彩的讨论。接下来马上就要邀请这个场次的主持人还有语坛讲者到台上就座。欢迎这个场次的主持人是台湾网络资讯中心余若凡董事暨执行长 Ms. Ruofan Yu, Managing Director and CEO of TWNIC, will be sharing the session. I would also like to invite our panelists. 欢迎语坛人上台就座。欢迎国家通讯传播委员会王怡慧委员，还有 Google 台湾总经理林雅芳，以及刚才的周开莲董事，还有台湾数位外交协会郭家佑理事长。So joining us on this panel, in addition to Ms. Rose Zhou, we also have Ms. Yihui Wang, Commissioner at NCC, Ms. Tina Lin, Managing Director of Google Taiwan, and Ms. Jiayou Guo, President of Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association. I will now give the floor to the moderator. 接下来就把时间交给主持人余若凡执行长，有请。
谢谢主持人。
Thank you so much. Obviously, I need to give a shout out to Rose Zhou for your very inspiring speech to help open our session. Today, we have leaders from the industry, but at the same time, we have someone like Ms. Guo Jiayou, who represents the younger generation, and Yihui obviously represents the public sector. So, after listening to Rose Zhou's presentation, let me share with you one piece of statistics. Well, you showed a photo at the end of your presentation. There's only one woman in that huge group. But in the second photo, there seems to be more women. So when it comes to gender equality, we have had our first women president, and our current vice president. Our current vice president is also a woman. Well, Taiwan actually has been doing quite well when it comes to promoting gender equality for public companies. And in terms of female board members, towards the end of 2024, it's less than 20%. But as compared with 10 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've come a long way. But still, there are far more men or male board directors than female board directors. So I'm just very interested in finding out how you see this issue. Especially all our panelists are in a position of leadership. So given the current status, how we should make sure women will be able to advance to the next level so that we can have more high-level managers who are women. Probably I can go to Tina first. Well, I think Tina needs no introduction because Tina is often interviewed by the media. She is managing director of Google Taiwan. In the high-tech circle, she had been working in that industry for more than 20 years. She used to work at Intel and so on and so forth. And after she joined Google, she very quickly became the managing director. So she's in the minority because we don't have too many women who are holding that kind of a high position in bigger corporation. So let me go to you first. How do you think we should empower more women, especially younger women, so that they will be able to assume more responsibilities? Well, for me, it's not a question of high-level, entry-level employees. For me, it's all about the social expectations on women. So this requires multiple generations if we want to make any changes. Because from very early on in our childhood, we were told what we can do, what we cannot do. And right now, you probably won't start answering every question by looking at the gender. Nowadays we don't talk about only men can do a certain job, only women can do another type of jobs. So as compared with previous generations, we've already broken free of that kind of stereotypes. However, for me personally, when it comes to higher level managers, well, basically, it's all about helping more people or to become more influential. Simply because I want to become more influential, I can achieve a greater public good. That's why I want to advance to a higher level. However, previously, we were pigeonholed into different places. You need to climb the corporate ladder so that you can become a high-level leader of a company. As I mentioned by roles, with the development of AI, larger organizations or even smaller organizations, they are forced to change because we will see more horizontal or flattened corporate structure. This for sure will happen. And if we want to make a contribution, if we want to become more influential, you tell yourself, I want to interact with more people. I want to assume more responsibility. I want to make more contribution. If this is something that's meaningful to you, then for me personally, I do believe the majority of women in Taiwan are thinking like that. Because you see something that's meaningful to you. If you see something to you that represents social injustice, then that's something you want to change, right? So I think that's probably how we can find an entry point to start thinking about this issue. In other words, we should begin with asking ourselves, what kind of contribution I want to make? If I want to contribute more, then probably there are certain positions, there are certain roles that will help you achieve your target because you are willing to assume more responsibilities. Well, I'm more introvert than an extrovert. However, for me, if you can convince me of something being meaningful, then I can work up enough courage to assume the responsibility to try to make things happen. So this is just to respond to the question put to me by CEO Yu. Well, in this AI era, as mentioned by Rose, we need to reimagine our future. In other words, we need to think out of the box. Corporate structures are becoming more flattened. In the old days, we talk about corporate ladder. That's vertical. But it's no longer applicable. So you said that we should probably begin with how I can become more influential, whether or not by assuming more responsibilities I can help more people. I think that's indeed a very fresh perspective. And secondly, next I would like to go to roles. Well, again, Rose is someone who requires no introduction. She served as an independent director for many well-known companies. And so she had a very enthusiastic participation in the corporate world. And during the break, among ourselves in private, we had some discussions, because obviously women, according to Tina, they want to become more influential. However, we live in a time where the only constant is change. And so in this changing time, how can women be sure what we want to do? Well, given the current state of things in Taiwan, Taiwan has come a long way. But if you take a look at all the public companies, most of them are still companies from the traditional industries. And for those companies, we don't see too many women board directors. But what we need for our society is role models, especially women who are willing to step up to the plate, to assume more responsibility, to serve as role models. For example, Xuzhou, the current CEO of Honghai, and Emily Hong, these are very good case in point because they have become role models respected by the entire society. So coming back to your question, with the introduction of AI into the picture, we are living through major transformation. So you almost feel like we are entering into a new jungle. So this is really a very big opening for women. Everybody follow the rule. What I did last year is what I do this year and what I will do next year. If you continue to do that, you don't have any edge. But uncertainty and ambiguity create the biggest opportunity. So what I mean is that at this point of great change, nobody knows for sure how to proceed next. So at this juncture, if you are willing to step forward, if you are willing to tell everybody, let me join your team, and I can make contributions, I'm willing to help, you will be welcomed. And also, given the flattened corporate structure, as mentioned by Tina, previously you probably didn't have that opportunity, but because of the flattened corporate structure, now there are more positions where you can move into in order to be helpful. For my own children, they only began their careers not too long ago, and they complained to me, I'm handling a lot of really monotonous work. Then I tell them, you probably can try to use AI, to handle those very boring and very labor-consuming work. So they took my advice, and they learned how to do coding. And now they're telling me every morning when I wake up, I realize my AI agent has already completed the coding task for me. So if you can begin adopting AI, and then you become a champion. So within your team, you can begin to promote the result of using AI. In a nutshell, this this is a time of transformation. This is so nobody is playing by the book, right? So this is a very good opportunity for women to step forward. Oftentimes, when there's a lack of clearly defined rules of the game, that's when new opportunities will be presented. But nobody knows the answer. So everybody has an opportunity. So I think that the first thing you need to do is close your eyes, just plunge, just take a plunge, just step into the arena where you will be seen. So I think because women are known to be great learners, and if you are equipped with the ability to solve problems, and don't forget to say yes, that you will thank yourself by being willing to come forward. Now I would like to go to Wang Yihui, Dr. Wang Yihui. Currently, she is a commissioner with the National Communications Commission. And again, she is someone with a wealth of experiences. Previously, she worked in the financial industry, and she was also a member of a think tank, which is Taiwan Institution for Economic Research. So what's your view on this? Well, today I think this is a very interesting session because I used to work in the private sector, and now I was given the opportunity to work in the government. So when it comes to women's participation in all of this, I see a clear difference between public and the private sector. When I was working in the private sector, I worked for foreign companies. They prioritize your professional capability. Therefore, as a woman, I didn't feel I was disadvantaged, but to a certain degree, I can still feel the glass ceiling. But all in all, I think professional capabilities prioritize over anything else. But in the public sector, we have to listen to many, many people. So for women to participate in the public sector, we actually have some mechanism put in place by the government to make sure women are given equal opportunities. For example, at Executive Yuan, there is a gender equality project, and every year we will convene 3 gender equality meetings, and each meeting will look at a lot of indicators because we have a lot of small projects, a lot of small meetings. So, for example, for a certain committee, there is a quota, almost a quota you need to fill. What percentage of committee members need to be women? And we also need to work with scholars and experts. Again, a certain percentage of scholars and experts need to be women. But I'm talking about a very special case, because we are talking about the communications industry, right? This is a field where there are more women than men. But with this being an exception, in a lot of committees, there is a legal requirement that a certain percentage of committee members need to be women. This is to remind everyone women's participation is something we value because we want to make sure we listen to all people. Before coming to the meeting today, I checked into our website because we conducted an annual survey. We surveyed telecommunications as well as the mass media communication industry. And I took a look at the survey result for the telecommunications industry. And I'll take a look at the ratio between men and women. I remember more than 60% were men, and the women account for 35-36%.
So So indeed, it's skewed to males a little bit. But of course, we review different statistics. For example, those holding a high-level management position in telecom industry, for example, male take up about 10%, because we do have different categories making up 100%, but only 10% of high-level positions, about 10%. A correction, only like 10% of male are working in high-level positions, but 6% of female working in high-level positions in telecom. So we see that the numbers still skew male. But over the past few years, we have seen a rising trend of females becoming high-level management. So we see that we should try to let people know that women still play an important role through policy design. And for all the regulated industries under NCC, we actually survey them after year. So just find out ways for female to more meaningfully participate in organizations. So what kind of measures have you implemented, for example? So through this kind of system design, we do hope to encourage meaningful participation of women in corporate decision-making. That's the way we go about it in the public sector. Thank you, Commissioner Wang. I think the government is more actively driving institutional change through policy design. But we know that the Financial Supervisory Commission is actually posing requirements on listed companies in Taiwan, trying to increase the share of female representation in companies. So maybe there will be more incentives to enhance the meaningful participation of women in company. Now, let's hear from the youngest panelist in this panel, Ms. Chayo Kuo, President of the Taiwan Digital Diplomacy Association, or the TDDA. I've actually known Chayo since she was younger, very, very young. But for many, many years, she has been very active in leading the TDDA. And, you know, the association has been doing a lot in terms of public outreach at home and abroad. And you actually have been sponsoring drama or plays to promote democratic values. So what's your view on this? Thank you, CEO Yu. I come from a different community because we are a CSO, civil society organization. We are not from the government or the enterprise, and most of our colleagues are women. And I think those who volunteer at our organization, about 80% of them are women. And the majority of our trainees in our training programs are also women. We are specialized in international exchange and people-to-people diplomacy. So why do so many women actually like this kind of international exchange at our organization? Well, based on our observations, we know that it takes a lot of intercultural communication or translation skills, and this is where women power can come into play, because I think women are relatively more patient, as Rose mentioned. We are more adept at dealing with ambiguity or uncertainties, and are more patient in getting their ideas across with a large group of people, or really seeing through the nature of things. For example, last month, we had a semiconductor diplomacy program by working with think tanks in the EU. We were talking about how Taiwan can be incorporated in EU's semiconductor policy. This is such an emerging area of exchange. So as we approach different think tanks or entities, for example, we discuss with Brussels-based think tanks or university professors, we brainstormed as to what really semiconductor diplomacy entails and what's Taiwan's role in this. But this is such a new and emerging idea. So it took us a lengthy period, a lot of time to really brainstorm. For example, when our colleagues were reaching out to different entities, there were a lot of big meetings, small meetings, in order to narrow down the scope of our discussion. And compared to men, women, I think, are more patient in, really understand where people were coming from. So after discussing the issue for about 1 month, finally we came up with a tentative model that will underpin our semiconductor diplomacy. And also, as an Asian woman, how are we viewed in the international arena, and how do we play to our strengths? Well, one strength of women is that when it comes to international cooperation, we like to use the plural we, but men tend to focus on the singular I, because men sometimes are driven to achieve success in society, so they sometimes are more assertive than what they want as an individual. But women focus more on collective power, plurality, and think about what we want to achieve as one. And given my experience in the past 8 years, like since the inception of the TDDA, I have been participating in a variety of exchanges as an Asian woman. Sometimes it takes me some extra effort to prove that I do have what it takes to sit on the same table with, for example, in meetings where are led by or chaired by white males. But when I step foot in the industry, I always try to dress myself like a man in order not to be looked down upon as a young woman. But after 3 to 5 years, I think, well, it's probably better to play to my personal, personality. So over the years, I've also learned that internationally, people have been increasingly embracing the idea of women leading international discussions. For example, we approached Ukraine-based entities. We have monthly regular meetings to build mutual trust. So this kind of trust is built meeting by meeting. And truth be told, I think people have lower guard against women. So women can actually try to leverage that kind of potential. In terms of organization management, when we engage in self-assessment, usually women give themselves really conservative ratings, but male colleagues usually rate them higher. For example, 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10 on the ranking scale, or give them full marks across the board. But women tend to be more critical of themselves. Probably they are doing the same thing with their male counterparts, but they will rate themselves only 8 or even 6 out of 10. Probably because of the long-term societal attitudes now preaching qualities such as humbleness, reservation. So that's why women tend to be more critical of themselves in such kind of self-assessment. But at the workplace, I don't think women should be that critical of themselves. And we don't really need to wait until we are given permission to do things we want to do. Because I went to girls-only schools, so we actually virtually we had to do everything. So there are not things that cannot be done. There are not things that cannot be done by men only. So that's the mindset that I encourage my colleagues to have when it comes to working at the workplace. If you believe you can do it, then you can definitely do it. You need to be more confident. You don't need to seek self-validation. Thank you, Jiayou, for your intervention. Yes, so there are some unimagined things. If you go to girls-only school, you can actually move beyond this gender disparity. Now, from the sharing of our panelists, we learned that sometimes women are driven by a different sets of motives as against their male counterparts. Sometimes women are driven by, for example, how we can help each other, achieving collective good, and we are sometimes also more critical of ourselves. And Rose talked about one point. For example, at the dawn of the internet, very few women participated in the development of the platforms. So probably we missed out on a golden opportunity, but now a new era has been ushered in. So what are some of the hurdles out there preventing Asian women to progress further? Because Asian women sometimes are held back for a variety of reasons. So any insights? For example, Tina, during our offline discussion, shared a lot of your views. Of course, we are going to open the floor for on-site Q&A. You may scan the QR code, and also you can queue up in front of the microphone rack during the Q&A session. Thank you. So maybe can we hear from Tina for this round? Yes, Rose, in her opening remarks, mentioned that when it comes to social development, it takes a multi-stakeholder approach to find middle ground. And in terms of leadership, it's called STEP. You need to examine the social impact, technological impact, economic impact, and political impact, or STEP for short. And in the private sector, leaders do not care only should not only care about financial performance, but the company's contribution to society or local community. You need to have multiple stakeholders in mind. So it's more like an ecosystem-oriented leadership where you should move beyond one single perspective only. And as Xuzhou just mentioned, perhaps women are more altruistic, or negatively put, women tend to be more critical of themselves. That also probably suggests that women have a smaller ego. So when it comes to a multilateral approach, you need to actually play down your ego by making sure that all the voices are heard, because you are driven by a grander vision. So when it comes to a lot of issues in society, we probably this kind of new mindset in leadership. It's not that, okay, I'm leading a group of 1,000. It means nothing, because leaders should not only focus on financial metrics, but to have multiple stakeholders in mind. So that's where women's potential can come into play. That's a potential of women in leadership roles. For example, there are always areas where women can contribute themselves to. And it's time to take the plunge. Of course, we need to have the right institutional support for people to realize their potential. But those with potential should not harbor a victim mindset. We need to have a favorable environment in place, but we also need to have more people to stand up. As Rose said, some people can step up to serve as role models or inspiration to people around them, so that our status quo can really be changed effectively. Okay, so just follow up on Tina just mentioned. Just a few years ago, we saw a lot of DEI initiatives. And sometimes people said it has gone into some strange direction or has been very much stigmatized, but it still espoused certain core principles. It encouraged a lot of companies to actually wake up, to address some of the unintentional imbalances in the corporate world that is the result of bias over the years, because these bias sometimes just are inherent in different systems, as Jiayou just mentioned.
Which is the bias.
So a lot of the biases are actually unconscious in nature. So if any social movement can make it possible for people begin to think about those unconscious bias, then this will help companies to wake up. Obviously, wake up or woke seems to be a very sensitive word nowadays. So probably the movement has gone off track a little bit, but we do need something that can help support this kind of cause, right? Because it takes probably hundreds of years for something becoming a common social value. So DEI is something of the kind that can help steer our conversation in a certain way so that we can probably reshape some of our values. Although we no longer talk about DEI. DEI used to be a buzzword. Simply because it is no longer a buzzword, simply because doesn't mean that DEI has lost all its value. Well, previously when we talk about DEI, we seemed to have some very fixed idea of how to implement the DEI. And for example, how I should redesign our corporate structure to promote DEI. But now we seemed to have advanced to the next stage, and that is how can we make sure women and men are given equal opportunities. There's no denying that certain jobs are probably more suitable for women, or by the same token, there are other jobs that are more suitable for men. So how do you see this, Yihui? So today, both Rose, Tina, or even Jiayou, all of them have been right in the sense that, women are just as capable as men. As long as we are willing to assume more responsibilities, we will be able to get the job done. However, sometimes it's a matter of limiting yourself. Sometimes it's a matter of the environment. The reason why the public sector is trying to do certain things is because we have identified the problem, and that is in the decision-making process, we seem to lack women's representation. If that is the case, then obviously we cannot have the best discussions. Well, today we are talking about internet governance, and we also want to advocate for multi-stakeholder model. So we are now aware we really need to make sure our discussions will include multiple perspectives. And whether we look at the public sector, private sector, or any sort of institutional arrangement, we need to make sure we provide more opportunities for women. And the women need to be willing to step up. And for certain fields, indeed, there are by nature more men than women. For example, there are more men who pursue STEM degrees. But when it comes to liberal sciences, there are more women. But with the development of AI, I think we can lower the threshold of the entry so that more women can also come into this field. If there are more women in the mix, I believe they will be encouraged to do even more. When it comes to public policy, I think the ratio between men and women is a very important focus. Well, we are in Asia, and we have received already 7 or 8 questions. But only Mr. Wu is willing to stand up behind the microphone. Are men allowed to ask questions? Of course, but you don't have a priority because I have already received 7 or 8 questions. So I'll probably will probably respond to one online question before we go to Mr. Wu, who is currently standing behind the microphone. So the questioner is a woman. I'm a woman, aged between 25 to 35. So what kind of professional capabilities should I equip myself with? As mentioned by roles, I want to take actions, but what kind of qualifications I should have? Probably roles and then Jiahui. Quickly, well, we are talking about AI empowerment. Therefore, you really need to jump onto the bandwagon, trying to familiarize yourself with AI. And you need to identify real-life use case. As long as you're willing to take a closer look, what is bothering you? What has been getting in your way when you tried to improve your efficiency? But you really need to make sure you become a problem solver. Then you will become more confident. Instead of asking, what I should do, what I should learn, who should I go to? You should start by doing. You should start by becoming a builder. That will definitely give you a big confidence boost. I'm also in that age group, a woman between 25 to 35 years of age. So women shouldn't be afraid of being seen. So if you are a woman aged between 25 to 35, please take a look at your contact list, and you probably can call somebody out because what that other woman was doing is something you also aspire to do. Because myself included, a lot of women believe that what we do is worthless. So as long as I get the job done, whether or not I get the credit doesn't matter. But in this day and age, that kind of thinking is no longer applicable. So you shouldn't be afraid of being seen, and because you need to prove yourself by demonstrating what you are capable of. Thank you very much. Well, when I looked at this question, I know for sure this is a question by a woman. What type of capabilities, what type of qualification we need to have. If it's asked by a man, he would say, this is something I want to do. But for a lot of women, they begin with self-doubt. Can I do it? Or what kind of qualifications do I need to have before I can get the job done? As you mentioned, although I already completed a task, but probably that means nothing. So both in Taiwan, throughout Asia, a lot of women tend to step back. They don't want to be seen. Well, probably you don't want to see a man asking a question. Probably my response to that question first. Not just women will ask that kind of question. Even for men, if I'm a man between 25 to 35 years old, I would ask myself how I can become a leader, how I can get things done, what qualifications I need to have. So this is not just limited to women. I would like to share a different perspective, just for the sake of continuing our discussion. As mentioned by Yi Hui, we know that ICANN has a history of 26 years since its founding in 1999. Since 2014, there is a project, DNS Women. We talk about a multi-stakeholder model. Already, people began to talk about what women can do within the ICANN organization. There was someone from Brazil by the name of Wanda, and she was very enthusiastic in organizing this type of activities. So that has become a fixed item on our agenda year by year, year in and year out. I believe women in Taiwan, as compared with their counterpart in Asia, they actually have more opportunities as compared with Japan, Korea, East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries. In a lot of those countries, women actually are discriminated against in the sense that they are marginalized. But relatively speaking, women in Taiwan have more opportunities. But still, we oftentimes hear complaints from women because they hope that they can advance to an even higher level. But we have female president already. We have female vice president, and Xuzhou is independent director for reputable companies. So probably what we can do is to share our experience. We share our experience with other Asian nations. Because I believe we have been doing a better job. I often attended international events, and I often see that for a lot of women in other Asian nations, they simply do not have as many opportunities as women in Taiwan enjoyed. So this is probably a comment to Guo Jiayou. This is something you probably can focus on because you are engaged in diplomacy. If you go to Japan, Korea, Southeast Asia, you definitely would feel you are more lucky to be in Taiwan rather than in those countries. So probably you can begin by sharing your experience. DNS Women, I also participated in that activity that you mentioned. Wanda, she had been advocating for that cause for more than 10 years. Every time I feel inspired by her. For example, Hui's page is created by a woman, and she's in her 90s, but she was the mastermind behind Hui's system. Back in the day, almost everyone was a computer scientist, almost everyone was a man, but here we have it, who is created by a woman. So that's very inspiring. We are already 5 minutes behind our schedule. I know you still have a lot of questions, so we need to wrap up. Time is changing very fast, and whether we look at roles played by men or the women, whether in the private sector or within government organizations, we can look to role models as a way for motivating ourselves. For example, all the panelists could serve as good role models. Thank you.
我们最后邀请所有的语坛讲者还有主持人来合影一张。非常感谢这一个场次很精彩，而且发人深省，给大家带来满满启发的一个场次。我们稍微往您的右手边。We want to thank all the panelists for a very inspiring panel. Let's have a group photo to wrap up this session. 请看上我们的摄影师。再一张。一个赞，经典的我们拍照的手势。谢谢，我们再次掌声，谢谢这个场次的语坛讲者还有主持人，谢谢。